So that is the coolest sort of memory of a reminder of a last name. I need to get something good like that. I'm with Sarah Selecky, and it's like so lucky, but with a E, Selecky.
Mhm.
People are never going to forget that. I'm never going to forget that. That's so good.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, it's a good one. And it's
Okay.
true. I'm so lucky.
Awesome. We're done. We're done. There's our goal. There's our goal. There's our takeaway action item is to come up with what is that word? It's like a mnemonic.
A
There's a term for it.
mnemonic. It's MN.
Mnemonic.
How do you even
See an
pronounce
enemy.
that? I need a mnemonic for how to pronounce mnemonic. I think it's mnemonic. I think it's like a silent M. Let's just say.
Yeah. Here we go. There's two writers here. Like, I think it's an NM. I think it's a see an enemy.
What's
I
the
think
root of
it's an
that
M.
word?
I know.
It has to do with memory.
Oh yeah. Okay. Wow. It is it's already a joy talking with you. We've already talked a few times and we just need to hit record because we need to watch the clock because I think our only challenge is going to be we have way too much in common and way too much parallels and overlaps and exciting ones and fun ones and efficient and effective ones and cool stuff for both of our audiences that I really think they can benefit from both of what we're offering and as you said, like a toggle. Need
Hmm.
some of that. Need some of that. Need some of Bradley. Need some
Yeah.
of Sarah. Need some of Bradley. Need some
Yeah,
of
I
Sarah.
feel like talking to you about your work, I feel like there's such a benefit, like drafting and revising. It's not like you write it. It's not like you write a book from start to finish without going back. Like there's some
Yeah.
cycles involved in that, and in the same way, I feel like there'd be some good toggling between our work
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
writers.
So to jump right into writing, you said something. So by the way, Sarah, we'll get into it in a minute, but she has like I joke to pieces about my quote unquote writing courses because especially when I have a course called Write Your Worst Book Ever that I can never even say without a smile, much less like a small laugh, because that's really what I'm all about is getting it done and having fun and not caring and all that good stuff that my audience knows about. But Sarah has like legit course. I can't even say that without laughing because then I'm like saying, what am I saying about my own thing? But I know what I'm saying about my own thing. And that's okay. I'm owning it. I'm owning it. So you said a minute ago, you said, because I was asking you focus more on fiction than nonfiction, but then you said, well, and you
Yeah,
said,
I said not really. I mean, I
yeah,
come from a background, I have learned my writing came from a background of fiction and short fiction in particular, which happens to also just be a very handy way to work on craft because you can have something that's 30 pages or less and that's finished that you can talk
yeah,
about in an hour with someone else. But what I really do is work on, I teach people how to embody their craft, how to make their writing sing and feel embodied and feel true. And that, whether you're writing memoir or
yeah,
fantasy or nonfiction, fiction,
yeah,
any form, writing craft is writing craft. So I came from a background of fiction, but the work, I mean, there's a character in memoir, whether it's real or not real, there's a characterization that needs to happen in and through the writing. So I teach people how to do that well.
yeah. You know, one of my students he's doing this technique that I love this. And every time I think about it, I think, why don't I do that more often? But because I write more nonfiction, personal development stuff, and I definitely get the stories in there. But he's doing this sort of, follow Jonathan Applefield along his journey, and you
Hmm.
get
Hmm.
this kind of fictionalized story of this. I think it's sort of a fictionalized person, and they go through his nonfiction content
Hmm.
in this
Hmm.
Johnny Applefield story. And so there's, like you just said, I wrote down embody their scene.
Embody the scene. So, I
Just
mean,
love
that's
that.
how, if you break it down, what's happening, I don't know. I'm not a neurologist. I don't know neurologically exactly what's happening, but I pretend. because I feel it in my body. When I read a scene
Yeah, 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 yeah.
that feels real. So this, what's his name? Johnny Appleby? What's his name? The character? Johnny.
Applefield. He's a cousin
Applefield.
of Appleseed, but they
Yeah,
just at the
Applefield.
Ellis
Got it.
Island, and they met screwed up at Ellis Island.
Okay. So Johnny Applefield, I mean, if I know what he looks like, then I can have a picture of him in my mind.
Mm,
Like it's like cinematic. So I can have a little picture. It's like it gives me purchase in image. All the five senses do that. So if he wears a
wow.
certain kind of cologne or uses a certain kind of soap, if he if whatever time of day it is, if there's like a sound of wind coming through the trees in the morning, that anchors me in the scene and the place, and my body, which is how I take in everything in the world. It's how I
Yeah,
understand and know myself in it. My body can anchor on those elements of the senses so that then I have a movie kind of running in my head so that I feel like I'm the character, or I feel like I'm there with the character. Maybe it depends on what
yeah,
we can use different craft elements to say if you want to be like the character themselves or just sort of sitting on the shoulder of their character watching, or a big bird's eye view of the characters. There are different things you can do with the quote unquote camera angle of your point of view in your scene. But very simply, if you can if you can let go of writing about or telling about what your character is doing and instead embody it on behalf of your character and become that character's consciousness, no matter what genre you're working in, your reader will have that experience of consciousness in and through
yeah.
reading your work. So then it becomes almost it lands in the same part of our brains as a memory. So that's like when we really feel something, when you read a book and you're like, oh, at the end of a book and it feels and you feel it,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
because you've been there with it. So there's an element of magic. There's an element of like
yeah,
that's the trick of the trade. That's the art,
yeah.
and that's what I teach people to how to do. Which we know how to do that when we're really little. We're experiencing
Right.
everything that way, but often through schooling, we begin to write reports. And we can begin to take, our teachers tell us to take I out of our sentences and make everything very official.
Mm,
And through that academic learning, we forget how to embody our writing and it becomes something else.
wow. No, I love when I'm such a doer. I just do. And I do, I get stuff done. Yay. But I don't have terminology necessarily for it, or, oh, I'm using the Jonathan methodology for this, or this particular technique or whatever. I'm just doing. But then it's fun to hear what you're saying because then I can apply it back to what I've done and realize like, oh wow. And I can see because especially in my nonfiction books, I definitely have stories in there. And I
Mm-hmm.
know because and that's what I hear back from people. I hear they're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh yeah, that cocktail party thing, event, whatever in your
Mm-hmm.
book. I'm like, cocktail party. I'm like, oh yeah. Because I think,
You
what
know,
topic is that? And they're like, no, 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 it's the
that's it.
cocktail
No, it's
party.
not the topic. And what's really interesting about this is, and from what you're sharing, is that often those times when we write an embodied scene, I'm just going to call it an embodied scene, but when we
Yeah.
lose ourselves in scene, there are different ways that people describe it, like the flow state or losing consciousness or whatever. What happens often in that time is that you become a doer, you stop thinking, you stop watching yourself. The self-consciousness melts away. Your ego kind of dissolves a bit in the moment of writing it. And those are not the places, generally speaking, without a lot of practice to understand it, that a writer, that an emerging writer or a beginning writer can feel confident about having
Mm,
done well, because they're not present in that judging way. They're not
yeah, yeah, yeah.
accessing the part of their mind that's seeing if it's good or not. And so what happens is you may even forget that you've written that because
Yeah,
your mind wasn't adjudicating it and evaluating it as you wrote it. You were actually present in your body as you wrote it, which
yeah,
means that that presence will transmit for the reader. So it's really, really great to have readers at that stage, understanding readers who understand that a raw draft is a raw draft and they're not going to start
yeah,
criticizing right away, but they're going to point out the moments in your writing that stood out to them, that felt true to them. And more often than not, especially when you're just starting, you don't even remember writing the parts that are most meaningful to other people because that's the moment where you've
Yeah. Yeah.
transmitted a real experience.
Yeah. Wow. Again, as the doer, I'm hearing what you're saying and I'm thinking like, oh yeah, that's usually we were talking about flow state. And that's often where, I mean, of course, as we all know, that's usually where the good stuff comes from.
It is, and it's when you talk to writers who don't have a practice, which is what we were talking about. I think we can talk about this practice, but
Yeah.
if you wait for the muse to strike,
Yeah.
um, then, well, I'll turn this around and say there are ways that you can, and this is also what I teach, more arrange your life and your writing time so that you access the flow state more reliably and consistently. So it's not a crapshoot in other ways.
Yeah.
Like there are things that you can do if you know the elements of what the flow state sort of requires, the different elements. There are like 8 things or something that the flow state requires. You can arrange your life so that those happen for you, so that when every time you sit down to write, it's not like waiting, oh, is it going to be here or not here? You show up anyway and you know what it feels like, and you can, tinker with the dials so that you show up in that flow state more often.
Okay. This is perfect because as we briefly talked about, and we were talking about my story with I wrote for 30 days and I finally got into the habit, which is coming up on 10-year anniversary. I did 30 days and 100 and 1,000 and 2,000 and 2,808 days. I did like 7+ years. I didn't miss a day in a row. And my only rule was to hit publish by the end of the day it could have been a 3-word little piece, could have been 3,000,
Mm-hmm.
didn't matter. Quality didn't matter. What kind of, except just my own personal, it has to be good enough to hit publish. But what I'm getting at is I got the daily thing. So thus the book every single day.
Mm-hmm.
Super simple. But what you just said, maybe we could even dissect the daily a little bit, because the subtitle of next book, Frequency, one of the subtitles is how often to do what and why.
I love it.
Right. And
Oh,
so
yeah.
I got the daily thing. Check.
Yeah.
Okay, daily. But then what you just said, it's actually kind of freaking me out a little bit, I gotta say, because because I'm like, wait a minute, no, I'm good with the daily thing. That's good enough, right? But what
Yeah.
you're saying, you are optimizing or potentially
Yeah.
optimizing
Yeah.
even more.
Yeah.
Because if I know myself, I'm totally morning creative guy. First thing in the morning, that's the optimal time for me. But that's probably one of your, I don't even know your 8 elements. You said there's 8 elements or something like that of flow. So
it's from Flow. It's from the book by Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi. He's the Hungarian writer. We lost him in 2020. He's the grandfather of flow. I mean, he's not. He didn't invent it, but he wrote a pretty foundational text called Flow. It's wonderful. And when I was reading it, it's been around since the 90s, I think. And I just saw it on everybody's bookshelves of smart people. And I was like, yeah, I'll get around to that sometime. That looks really dense. I'm writing novels right now. This isn't going to happen. But I did read it.
Smart people.
Like, look at it's just so thick. But what he does is he does case studies, and he looks at people in a variety of different fields. So rock climbers, musicians, heart surgeons, writers, marathon runners, people who are involved in activities that put them in a state of flow. And he did an extensive research to find out what are the elements of that state, what do they have in common. And I do recommend anybody read them, or just read kind of Cole's notes about the book, just to get those. I actually have Find the Flow. I did do a seminar, and I have a webinar on it that breaks it down for writers and shows like different ways that you can add that into your life so that you can do what you want to do, so that you can like achieve whatever the goal is. And I know that a lot of writers stand by write every single day. And I know that it's been a remarkable way to establish a habit and write books. And I think it works for a lot of people. I think that it's also if you're not suited to writing every single day, it can be quite a punitive way to
Yeah.
lead a writing life.
Yeah.
And I realized this about myself in the past, I don't know, handful of years, the past decade, that I'm much more project based as a worker, as a creator, as a writer, as an explorer, as a person who lives in the world.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
I don't get lit up by managing a system. I get lit up by starting something and finishing it,
Yeah.
and then pausing. There's a phase.
Yeah.
So I don't write a lot of series. There are writers who like write trilogies or longer, just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
keep going and keep going. And that is the joy for them. But if I line myself up as a writer with someone who comes out with a book every year, or a continuing book that's in the same
Yeah.
series or same world, I can feel like I'm not successful because I'm not doing that. What works more for me is understanding, I call it taking my temperature, understanding what it feels like to be in a flow state, like really, really studying. I've spent some time studying what that feels like for me,
Wow,
how it
cool.
feels in my body, how it feels, what are the conditions that I can set up so that I know I'm there. And then with practice, it gets easier and easier and easier to go there. So I still think writing every single day is great when I have a project that I want to complete. There's momentum to that. So I know that there's a book and I'm going to write every single day for 30 days or every single day for 90 days, as you say, and I'm going to finish it. And you just kind of set it in your mind. I'm going to finish this project by X. And then you just do it and you see what comes out at the end of that. But overall, like big picture, there are years in my life where I'm not writing every day.
Yeah.
And then I can chunk it out and go away somewhere for a week and like download a bunch, write a bunch, and then come back out. Or, every month, tinker away on something a little bit every month. And it's no less efficient. I think that the key is feeling like you have some agency around it, some self-knowledge and self-awareness around it, and that you do it mindfully and on purpose. So it's something that you're doing by choice, that you feel like you're part of. And then you become the creator of your own writing time. And we were talking about this before we started recording this, about the frequency being, there are lots of different kinds of frequencies, depending on the person, depending on the activity. So knowing and choosing it on purpose, I think, gives you the power. I think that gives you the energy to create something and not feel like something is happening to you or not to you, but actually that you're the one in control that's collaborating with something to write something or make something or do something.
This is you're you're making me think too much because
Sorry.
no, but in a good way, because this is my main most popular best-selling book, right? Every single day. And it's just called Every Single Day because it's very brutal, very simple, right?
Yep.
But the subtitle that is not there, but thanks to the past 5 minutes, I might maybe need to sneak in somewhere at some point. It's because if I tell you, Sarah, okay, you should write every day, or you should jog every day, or you should eat broccoli every day, or whatever, and you're going to say, oh, okay, for how long do you want me to do that? And if my answer is forever,
right,
it's going to be, I mean, I can honestly almost predict your reaction is going to be, oh,
yeah,
that's overwhelming. Forever, like that's a long time. Forever,
but that's how it feels. I think that I think a lot of writers I know, and a lot of writers who come to my class, feel like they're failing already because they haven't written every day already, and they don't know how they're going to write every day in the future. And it's just it prevails. It's not a myth. It prevails because a strong habit where something happens, like anything that we need to do to live, like we need to breathe every day, we need to drink water every day, there are things to do. You got to floss your teeth every day. These things are just like our human habits that we understand we need to do, and we stack them. If we're into optimizing, we stack our habits. But writing isn't like flossing your teeth.
No.
It's a creative act. It's not maintenance, it's creation. So thinking about it with a bit of compassion for yourself and also excitement for the project that you want to achieve needs to be part of it, so that you feel like there's some space there.
When I stopped telling people that I wrote for 7+ years every single day in a row, because it would freak them out,
You
and
make
they
them
would
feel
say,
real bad.
yeah, or
They're
that's
like, oh, I
that's
could
like
never be a writer.
that's Mount Zeus,
Yeah.
that's Mount Olympus. I'm never gonna get there. And then I would even say, like, at some point I thought, I don't even want you to go. You don't even want to go there. I mean,
No.
I'm a nutcase, right?
And it was fun for you. I
It
mean, what I
was fun
hear
for
is
me.
that it was fun for you. It was an
It
anchor. It was
was.
a process. It was like,
It was.
you
Yeah.
know, and that's a whole bunch of other stuff. Like writing can be fun. That's a whole other topic. We
Yeah.
can
Yeah.
next podcast, because
Yeah.
even that is kind of a revolutionary concept for a lot of
Yes.
the writers and emerging writers I work with. Like for it to be fun is like, wait,
Yeah.
like this has to be hard for me to achieve something and to
Yes. Yeah.
achieve any credentials.
But they've got to get over that initial hump. And I'm speaking absolutely from experience. A guy who was that my dream was to be a writer, but I made this dream so huge and so scary and so mountainous and so
Yeah.
insurpassable that's why I didn't start.
Yeah.
Because if you don't start, you can't fail. That
Yeah.
was my whole philosophy. If I don't start, I can't fail. Great.
Yeah.
Well, what's the solution? Don't start. Cool. Done.
Yeah.
And but if we remember back to hello, here I'm talking 7+ years. But if you remember, how did I start? I started because a guy like dragged me kicking and screaming, totally unwilling, and he forced me for 30 days to write, like
Mm-hmm.
against my will. I'm like, fine, because big bold
So
super
much
dude here.
resistance.
Oh my God. Because
Yeah.
no, 30 days, I was such the like writer snob who was not writing.
Right.
Hello,
Yeah.
that doesn't
Yeah.
work. That's a mutual torment.
Yeah.
It was total
It's
torture.
surprisingly common. Yeah.
And okay, and so thus surprisingly common torment, torture,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
self torture.
Yeah. So
And
much.
this is why for me, I've come full circle, and it's been 10 years since those 30 days. It's been 10 years. And that's why now I have this program called How to Write Your Worst Book Ever.
Yeah.
Because I had a program called How to Write Your Best Book Ever, and it eventually turned into total satire because I was so snarky about it. I mean, like I have a sales page, and the sales page says something like, "Oh, starting date tomorrow, 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 ending date never, never, never."
Yeah.
Right? And it was after reading it, you're probably in tears because you're thinking, "Who is this guy? He's a torturer." And that was my joke. And of course, in the end, I say, this is a whole joke. This isn't really a course, because your best book ever is either impossible, or you probably shouldn't start with it, because, oh, take it from me, spending 9 years of not doing it. How fun was that? Not fun.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you
Mm-hmm.
know what? Let's bust through that. Let's bust through that. We're going to put that on the shelf real quick, that best book ever. It's not going away. Don't worry. Don't worry. And we're going to go have fun. We're going to go have total, silly, childlike,
Mm-hmm.
innocent, pure, slap happy, slapstick fun.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yes.
we're gonna get your book done in 10 days.
Yes. So here's the thing about writers and writing. I'm going to try to bring this home. A lot of writers who I know are thinkers, and they go into it. Someone has told them that they're at a younger age. Someone told them, you know what, you're really good. You're really good at writing. You should be a lawyer. You should work in communication. You should write this essay for your sister. You're the writer of the family. You're the writer of the family. So this platform builds. Some of it is their own building, and some of it is like just like the culture, what we put on writers. It's just, poets used to be revered. They're not anymore, but they used to be like, right, like, kind of divinely connected almost back in the day.
Yeah.
Because words are really powerful, and the ability not just to communicate an idea, but to use language to talk about something, to transmit an idea, a learning, an emotion, a story, an insight that is outside of language, that you can't express in words, but then to use words to express it. This is what good writing does. It expresses what's unexpressible. And writers come into this thinking a lot, actually, and thinking a lot, and thinking about the thing it is that they need to stop thinking about in order to read it. In other words, other art forms allow the artist, like a sculptor or a dancer or a musician, to leave the world of language, to express something and feel something and go somewhere. Even if they're choreographing something through language that's very, very particular, even if it's a very complex and nuanced stage show, in the moment of creation, language is gone. But writers need to hold on to language and all of what it's doing on the left side of our brain, which is very logical. It's like word and meaning, naming, naming, naming. It's not very artistic. It's very linear, our language center of our brain. But we need to access that linear language center while also evoking the nonlinear, emotive, sense-based world of the right side of the brain, where language doesn't exist. But we need to do that simultaneously, which is really, really difficult. I think that writing is really hard for this. I think this is why we have all these neuroses and resistances, because it's actually genuinely the most difficult thing. It's crazy. Who wants to, like, writers are crazy people going into this work. And on behalf of all the rest of us, so we can experience learning and stories and stuff. It's like, really, they're alchemizing a great deal of work for us. Writers do. You do. We do. And so of course the perfection exists idealistically in the mind before you start trying to do that tinkering out of, like, it's very awkward, like language, not language, language, not language. So I think that this, like, write your worst book ever or have fun while you're doing it, like, it's even more powerful than go into the flow state, because you can kind of think about how that can even be like kind of like think about how to do, but just actually having fun, just actually stop caring about whether it's good or not good and actually do something that's playful. If you can get to that point, while simultaneously having the fun of study, because a lot of writers have really great brains that like to put things together, that like to seek patterns and make connections and study. And some writers really love research, right? And interviewing and historical work. And so if you can make learning the craft fun as well, or following the 30-day program, make it fun. If there's anything that you can make fun while also doing it instead of having to escape, that's kind of the paradox that is the sweet spot, I think. When when you can make the work itself not feel like work, then that's the powerful thing. And all these tricks of how to play in the midst of your work, really, there's no joke. They're no joke. It's really important. It's the good. That's the stuff. That's the sweet spot.
I'm so thrilled you just brought up, because I forget, I think, how, like, why am I even doing this, right? First of all, like, why are we writing? Why am I bother helping other people write? Why am I now had this whacked out weirdo worst book ever program that's going to quote unquote trick people into writing? Why bother? Why am I even bothering this? But you just reminded me, because writing is, to put a simple word on it, it's therapeutic. It's therapeutic. It is cathartic. It is in so many ways. And yes, it can be difficult. And as you said, it's not as simple as dance or paint or whatever, because it's the linear and we have to think, and it's intellectual and there's words and they have to flow and all that. So there are elements that are difficult, but you just reminded me of all of the positive. I mean, why would I even be doing this? Why are we doing this?
Yeah.
But because there is this gold at the end of the rainbow, or we're actually living on the rainbow, because we're always in the gold and we're always in the rainbow. But you have to write to get there. And I think that's where don't spend the years of wanting, dreaming, wishing, hoping, thinking, talking about, wishing upon, not doing it because of the fear, because of the perfectionism, because of the expectations. Because, like you say, oh, Uncle Johnny says you're the writer of the family.
Yeah.
And
it's way more fun to just be in the rainbow.
Yeah.
It's way more fun in here. Like, it's just much more fun.
Good title. It's way more fun to just be in the rainbow.
Is it like you think that looking at it is the most beautiful shimmering thing, but
Yeah.
actually when you're inside it, it's
Yeah.
pretty fun.
Yeah. Wow. I think that wraps up nicely to one
Mhm.
of our 14 proposed topics.
Sure. I think that's a good one. I think that's a good one. Let's wrap up at the rainbow. I like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Okay. To be continued on the other 13 topics we could easily talk about for another 30 minutes each. And I hope to, and I look forward to. And Sarah Selecky, it has been a joy, and I look
Thanks,
forward to our
Bradley.
next call. And thanks
Me
for being
too.
here.
Thank you.
Bye.